Hello, Collateral Gaming listeners. Chazzle Dazzle here from the Trial by Error Variety Show podcast. I just wanted to take a few seconds to invite you guys over to what we do. No, it's not video games, but we do invite really awesome and unique bands from all over the world. We dig deep into their souls and find really cool stories to tell you, and there's tons of music every week, so subscribe to us wherever you subscribe to your podcast. We look forward to having you.
I'm Ashley Chancellor.
And I'm Megan Gomez.
This is Collateral Gaming.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Collateral Gaming, the only gaming podcast that matters. We're diving back into some fun stuff today, but first off, I am Megan Gomez.
And I'm Ashley Chancellor. This is part 2 of our episode on Hellblade Senua's Sacrifice. If you didn't listen to part 1, listen to part 1 first, or else this may not make a lot of sense.
Yeah, no one at all.
But, yeah, anyway, take it away, Megan.
Oh my gosh, so we have a lot to get into. So, first off, I found it so cute because Alan picked up the game right after we started talking about the episode, because we've got a couple days before we move, so we're not working right now. And I get home from my last day of work, and he's sitting there, like, loading up Senua, and I was like, oh my god. Can I just say, for a game released in 2014, wow.
Oh, yeah,
Graphics
it still looks
even to
great.
this day is just beautiful. I was shocked because there's a lot of games that came out in 2014. You're like, dang, this didn't age well. Like 3 years post Skyrim, and you're looking at this game and you're like, what? Are these even from the same decade? Like, what is going on? It's like, it's insanity. It's such a beautiful game. So pretty.
Yeah, 100%.
Also, if you have surround sound speakers, which we have like a sound bar and it's got like its own subwoofer, even without the headset, which is highly recommended when you do play this game, you can still hear all the little whispers and trepidations of the people in their head. It's so crazy. Even on its own sound bar, it still sounds ridiculous. Like, this game is just, oh.
Yeah, totally. I mean, yeah, the we didn't really get into the presentation of the game. I think that's worth talking about, like you said, because the graphics still feel great. 8 years later? Yeah,
8 years, yeah.
And so the sound design is incredible. Who's the soundtrack composed by? I think.
I don't know this one for the first time in my life.
The sequel? Let's find out and see.
Let's do a little investigation, yes.
A little bit of research, yeah. I just loaded up the game FAQs page. That's not going to help us very much.
David Garcia and Andy I don't want to butcher this, but I think it's La Plegua.
La Piega? I don't know. La Plega? I'm looking at it too, yeah. It's funny.
Oh, it's on Unreal Engine 4. Okay.
Yeah, and Hellblade II Senua's Saga is going to be made in Unreal Engine 5. That's what they're developing it with. But I think someone else is doing the soundtrack. Let's see. Halong.
Oh, I'm sorry. This was released in 2017.
Okay, that actually makes a lot more sense.
I was like, how is this? I saw something that said 2014, and I was like, I feel like it's a lot newer than that, but I don't doubt it. I mean...
Yeah, when you said that, it surprised me. It genuinely surprised me, because, yeah. But no, 2017, that doesn't make it any less impressive, mind you.
None.
But, yeah, I think I remember reading that as well. So, in the feature that... I'm stoned as fuck right now.
Fair enough. Fair enough. I'm not even going to judge you for that, bro.
Yeah, no, I wanted to also kind of talk about the gameplay a little bit more. I held myself back a little bit on the previous part. I wanted to really get into some tidbits here in the second section, which, first of all, we mentioned it in the last episode, but the game uses very minimal, little to no UI at all. In fact, there's really no HUD to speak of in the game.
Pretty much, no. Yeah.
I mean, the only UI elements are, I think, like whenever you see the focus charge up, and even that is like a rune that's hanging on Senua's body. So it's really not UI; it's used in the environment. So this game really gives you that full sense of immersion, and like we said before, you have to rely instead on the Furies, the voices in Senua's head that are telling her, and like we mentioned before, are often unreliable, but at least in combat, they're all you fucking have.
Behind you! Oh god.
I think when they say behind you, that's always true, but...
And also just the combat element of this is very interesting because there's like, in a lot of games, for example, Alan and I have picked back up Jedi Fallen Order because who wouldn't after the announcement of a freaking sequel? Hello. There's health bars on all the enemies. Cal has his health bar. Like, there's a lot of games where things have health bars. These guys don't. They just drop dead. You're like, oh, I'm done killing them. Cool.
Yeah.
Next part. Like, you never know when they're going to die. You just relentlessly slash your sword at somebody until they're dead, which is really weird, but it also makes sense. Like, she doesn't, like, in this full state of psychosis, she's just going for it. She's like, you're in my way. Get the fuck out of my way. I don't give a fuck. It's like, oh, okay. That's fine.
Yeah. These beings that probably aren't there. I think those are the most obvious illusions that exist, is because the sword just appears out of nowhere. She's not carrying a sword. It's like her fighting against I guess metaphorical representations of her mind state turned into, for her, a literal manifestation of those things. And that's really beautiful. But I like how, like you said, there are no health bars. I mean, when the enemies are close to death, they'll often look fatigued, and you can tell they're not defending themselves. They're kind of on the ground heaving. So and usually the voices will tell you, finish it.
Yes, and that's something that I think is so cool that Ninja Theory did, because it's not traditional. It's not at all, because even in games like Elden Ring, for example, there's a health bar, and it's like, oh, I've completed phase 1 of this. It's like they just slowly get slower and they stagger. Like, that's something that's got to be difficult to add into a game. Like, not only are you adding the element of combat with no UI, none of this, but you're adding in just this element of literal just fight to the death. Like, there's no logistics about it. It's literally just slashing and crashing and all of this stuff, and they literally slowly die like in a real battle, which is just insane, because it's like, I haven't seen many developers do anything like this ever. Pretty much everything in every game, like, it's pretty much like a meme now. Like, a health bar is like something like you can get it on a sticker, and like you have hearts for Zelda and all that stuff. Like, this is a game where you don't have that, and it's so extraordinary.
The enemies don't have health bar, and you don't have a health bar.
Nope.
And that's the only way that you can tell is that when Senua seems to be more ragged and is reacting slowly, when she's really close to death, she's like,
her breathing changes too.
Yeah, and she's leaning on her sword, and you can't even pull off all of the attacks that you normally can do. And the voices will start saying, she's close to death, she's close to death. But what I think is really cool is when the enemy hits what would be the finishing blow, what kills off the rest of her health bar that you don't see, is you get a second chance, and if you rapidly press a button, then Senua will get up. I mean, I mashed X. I don't know if there was a correct option or if there were other options. I just maxed X because it's the dodge button on PS4, so...
Fair enough, because this game, that's the thing also that I love about this game is, a lot of the games we talk about, they're very intense storyline games with multiple options. Like, you were just talking about how, like, the sword magically appears like Aloy in the intro sequence. I was so confused when a rope just came out of her ass like fucking Spider-Man. But you don't get like a traditional introduction sequence. You don't get any of that. Like, you literally just go right into it. That's it. Like, you walk through, like, she's walking and you're getting familiar with the controls, but it's not like, hey, press X to dodge, press this to jump. There's none of that. It's just figure it the fuck out, boy.
You have to pause the game and look at the menu. I remembered having to do that. Just to kind of get a feel for the controls. And the only help you usually get is that they'll be like, focus.
Yes, you can do it.
And like, okay, if you go to the pause menu and you go look it up and you see that the right trigger is focus, then you're like, okay. Or maybe you're one of those people that just start testing out the controls the second you have got the controller in your hands.
That's me.
And so
10 out of 10.
Yeah, so either way, you figure it out, and you learn, okay, that's the focus button, that's what that does. And like I said before, most of the gameplay outside of combat is just that, walking around and focusing on things to solve puzzles, whether that's finding runes in the environment or focusing on something specific to trigger an event, or focusing on broken bridges and shit from a different perspective to form it back together, or just literally walking through these archways especially in the Valravan segment, where they and I think it comes back in one of the trials.
Mm-hmm.
And that actually kind of tripped me out a little bit. Sometimes I wasn't quite sure what to do, because you go through the archway one way and it wouldn't do anything, and then you go through it the other way and it wouldn't do anything, and then you try it again and it like a USB connector.
It's like that janky headphone cord when you're in middle school, like wrapping it around your phone.
And you're like, what? Did I break the game? There are a couple moments in the game, actually, where I noticed a little bit of glitchiness. Nothing game-breaking. Nothing like on the level of like Assassin's Creed, which is a game developed by Ubisoft, whereas this is a team of 20 or so developers.
Yeah.
Technically, in some sense, an independent game, but not really.
Yeah, no, and it's amazing that such a small team did this, and the fact that, you've got huge games like Assassin's Creed and there's little to no glitches. Like, even in freaking Horizon, Aloy's sitting there doing a 10-second dance party after freaking rebels are killed. It's like, okay, all right.
That's a big fucking game, so it makes sense.
Yeah, and it makes sense, and they have patches, but this game, they're just like, all right, here you go, this is our game. And we're like, oh,
well,
okay.
That's what makes it different, I think, is they focus on quality over quantity. Like we said before, it's not very long. You could probably get through this in one sitting if you wanted to.
If you really wanted to, yeah.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I mean, you could do, like, I don't know, a 3-hour stream and probably get through the whole story. I don't know. I'd have to look it up, but it doesn't feel very long, especially, I guess, if you know what you're doing. But there's not a lot. It's a very linear path, and this world isn't very big, and so that's what allows Ninja Theory to craft just an amazing experience all throughout, and one that, due in part to its challenge, will still keep you there as long and not knowing what the fuck to do, because it gives you almost no direction. This game will keep you busy. When I say this game could be completed as quickly as 3 hours, I mean that's an estimate based on if you really know this game, but
if you have like a hyperfixation on it, yeah, absolutely.
I'd say you could spend a good 10 to 15 hours on this your first playthrough.
Oh yeah.
Especially if you're actually trying to go for like all the lore stones, and you're like me, you're checking other forks in the pathway just to see if there's anywhere else to go or something else to do.
100%. Oh, yeah, we're both completionists. We know this. I'm sorry, guys. I'm not the type to blare through a game. I'm just not.
I didn't get the trophy for the lore stones though, so I must have missed a couple somewhere. I'll have to go back and run through. I don't know if this game has a new game plus, or if it just keeps track of everything, and so that you can just go after the ones.
I don't know. I've never really tried to go back into it. I've always just completed it and then made a new game.
Yeah, I mean, I think a new game plus wouldn't make much sense, but like Seto could carry the badass sword she gets at the end, I guess, but
maybe, yeah.
That would be the only thing. But really, the main thing is just if there was some way to keep track of the collectibles, in this case, the lore stones, I think that's it.
Yeah. And if there was a way, because, sometimes you put down a game and you don't pick it up for a while. For example, you've got Mass Effect, where they've got all of that lore where if you stop for a little bit, you can pick it back up and you can figure out what's going on. With Senua, it's just like, all right, let's keep going. It's like, what the fuck happened? Where am I? What's going on? Like, there's none of that. But I know we also did talk about what we wanted for the sequel. I don't know if we're ready to talk about that yet, but I did read some stuff that's very, very interesting. And I did pull up an article before we started recording. So in an interview with Spanish site Vandal, combat designer Juan Fernandez says that we are raising the bar by doing more with less. We have more people than with the first Hellblade, but the quality that we are giving is through the roof compared to teams behind similar titles, which already makes me more excited, but also just makes me wonder what else they could do, because this game really isn't a lot, but it's impacted so many people, and it's on Game Pass. It's talked about a lot, actually. It's one of those games where it's underrated, and it's very, very unique. And with the gaming industry the way that it is, there's a lot of things that fall into niches, there's things that fall into groups, and this is on its own. It's underrated, and it doesn't have its own category. It's just Senua. So I'm kind of interested to see where they're going to go with the sequel, because there's a lot of ways that this can go, and there's going to be more people than just Senua. So how does she deal with outside people? How does she deal with her own psychosis going through this? Mind you, this is during like a Viking Age time, so there's no like freaking psychiatrist. And I it also makes me wonder, like, are we going to get more coordination with this mental health specialist that's like gonna like figure out how she's going to work with people, how she's going to talk with people? Like, I'm just so intrigued to see what they're going to do, and I love the fact that they're so dedicated to this, even though it's an indie game. It makes me so happy as a gamer, because there's a lot of things out there that they're just pushing forward to make their money. We've talked about this with Anthem, Cyberpunk. There's a lot of games out there that have not done very well. And for them to continue what they're doing, knowing that this game isn't the most popular game on the planet, and yet they still want to continue it and make an amazing title, is really inspiring. And it's really, really cool, because there's not a lot of developers out there like that anymore.
Yeah, I agree. And it's interesting because if you look at Ninja Theory's other projects, like they did the Devil May Cry reboot. I know.
Yes.
I remember that coming out. I never played it, and I haven't actually played the original Devil May Cry games either, but I've always wanted to. And in fact, the reboot kind of stood out to me. It looked kind of cool, but I don't know how well received it ended up being.
I don't know, because that's not really a game series that I've picked up. It's just not one of the things that I've done. I know that they were founded in the early 2000s, and this was their first self-published title. Looks like they haven't done much, though. They were acquired by Microsoft in 2018, so they're now a subsidiary of Microsoft Studios.
I remember Heavenly Sword. I remember that demo in GameStop.
Mm-hmm.
That was something that they did, and that was on the PS3. In fact, that's in Heroes. If you watch the TV series Heroes, and I want to say like season 2 or 3, there's one of the characters is playing Heavenly Sword. Yeah, like you said, they're a subsidiary now. So they're a subsidiary of Microsoft
Studios. Mm-hmm.
now? Huh. So, well, that doesn't bode well. Well, no, because I think
They were acquired during E3.
Really?
They had announced that they entered into an agreement to acquire Ninja Theory alongside 3 other studios. What?
Yeah, it is true. Hellblade 2 is gonna be only on Xbox and PC.
Mm-hmm.
And specifically only Xbox Series X and S. God fucking damn it! Alrighty, I'm probably gonna have to get a Series S then. That's probably gonna be my best option.
I will say, they're worth it. And this is going to deviate a little bit from the topic here, but seeing as how this is tying into the sequel a little bit, I will say, being a gamer and, growing up primarily on PlayStation and Nintendo products, getting my first Xbox was a lot of fun. And while there is a lot of social gaming on Xbox, they do have a lot of great titles, and they honestly are a really good bang for your buck, because not only do you get the Xbox itself, you also are going to pay a bit more for the live and stuff like that, as you would with PlayStation, and paying for things for Steam and all that stuff. But you really do get a lot for what you're paying for every month. Like, this game and hundreds of other games are on the Game Pass, and I understand that PlayStation is trying to move that way, but the fact that they're actually giving this a chance to be a PlayStation or a Xbox exclusive is very, very good for the series too, because gamers get bored. I'll admit it. I'll be the first one to admit that I have a lot of unfinished games, and whenever you hear news about a new exclusive, if it's the type of game that you would play, it piques your interest. So I'm excited for Senua to be an exclusive, because that's going to give this series more publicity.
Well, and I think it works because we have really great high quality titles on the PlayStation side already.
Yeah, and a lot of big titles coming too.
Yeah, I mean, so I guess you're right. I think it's good that Microsoft, I guess, has a series now besides Halo and Gears. It's just, I guess it's disappointing if you're not, if you played it on PlayStation and you're not planning on getting an Xbox. But, like we said before, the ultimate goal with any of us who are working on the podcast is to have both, all the consoles, because you're just gonna have to, and to miss out on exclusives of either console and run a gaming podcast, for
it's
shame.
not fun. No fun.
I think I'm actually okay with it. One, PS5s are hard to find. I don't know when they're going to become available, and they're more expensive. And when I get the PS5, I'm going to get the full thing. I'm going to get the regular, not the digital edition. But with the Xbox, I'll get the Series S, you know.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, like from what I've experienced with the Series S, because our buddy has the Series X, and our other friend has a Series S, and Alan just bought one. It's worth it. It's so much worth. It was like I think we got it open box at Best Buy for like $280. It runs. I'm not even kidding. For that price point, which is not a lot compared to a lot of the other consoles that are out there, it was less expensive than a Switch. It's the same amount as a Switch. It's 10 times better as a digital console than the Xbox One ever was. I don't know what happened. I don't know what the kind of turbo fire they got from that little snail in that Disney or Pixar movie, but oh man, they did it. And it is quiet. It's very small. And for the people that like small things, it's a little baby console. It's so cute. It's not even it's like a little bit bigger than a internet router.
Yeah.
It's so tiny. It's so cute. It's amazing.
Yeah, and if it'll run Hellblade 2, because I've seen what is on Xbox Series X and S, and what it's capable of, and if the sequel is going to run on that, it's going to be fantastic.
Oh my god!
And with the best kind of PC that you can get. I mean, I'm sure the tech specs requirements are going to be off the walls because it's going to be a console exclusive.
With the graphics enhanced, bro. Oh, I'm gonna faint just talking about it.
Yeah, or a next generation or current generation exclusive, I guess. I'm glad that we're actually seeing that. I think we mentioned this in the news segment of the last episode maybe, but it's okay that we've had that we're going to have games that are now going to be current gen exclusive because, well, one, PCs, you can upgrade your PC and run it,
Mm-hmm.
Two, though, because you're getting the most out of games that way.
Yeah.
And you're not holding back your games.
Yeah, and that's one thing, like there's a lot of, stigma around having the best, having the newest, and all of that, but as a gamer, it's always important to like give the devs the respect. And like that's not saying that if you have a lower level console, like that's a problem. Like I am still playing Horizon Zero Dawn and Horizon Forbidden West on my PlayStation 4. It still works, it still goes. And you don't necessarily have to give up your other console because you bought a new one, but I understand if you want to sell it for the new one, by all means. But I think it's a good thing because it's like when you think about it, consoles, when you buy a console or a PC for gaming, you're investing in a hobby time because this is the time that people can use, to get away from school, to get away from work, to get away from the problems in life. And that's the biggest aspect of gaming is being able to just get out of your own life and get into a different one and get away from your problems and your stresses and your troubles and all the things that are going on in the world right now, especially, recently, besides Johnny Depp winning that trial, boy. We stand Johnny on this podcast. If you don't, bye-bye. But I think it's really good that, we're getting things like this that are pushing us all to, open the envelope and see what else is going to come out for consoles. I mean, just alone with the Oculus, those things are mind-blowing. I've only ever played with them like once or twice, but good Lord, they're terrifying. I'm scared of them. Because, like, there's going to come a day when things are just covering up our faces and we're going to be able to talk about, the transition from PlayStation 4 to PlayStation 5 and how it was drawn out and how, they've done all these amazing, capable things on these consoles. And it's such a worthy investment. Always invest in gaming if that's what you love.
This game might actually be kind of cool in Oculus.
It is.
Wait,
It's available in VR.
What? There is a VR? Okay, I didn't know. Because I wonder how this plays on Switch.
This would scare the shit out of me on VR. I've never played it, but I do know that it is available. On Switch, it would be kind of interesting because they just added the software capability to add a Bluetooth headset because you had to plug one in before.
Right, which means that the hardware was there. You don't add Bluetooth functionality to your console by accident.
Yeah, it's like the Apple CarPlay. Like my car's a 2021 and they have the CarPlay and they just came out with wireless CarPlay. I'm like, bro, can you just give me the software? Like,
well,
not fair.
It's got to have the hardware to run it. It's got to have Bluetooth capabilities.
Yeah.
So all that meant was them, activating the firmware so that it's possible.
Yeah, exactly. Chrysler, you can do your job now, please, friends. I spent $50,000 on this damn thing.
But no, I wonder how this game plays on Switch because I considered playing it on Switch. And I asked you about it. I said, is this a game do you think would be a better experience though on PS4? Like, is it worth it? Because that's something that Zach had told me about Outlast. He told me like, don't play it on Switch, just get it on PS4.
Yeah.
You don't want a toned down version. So I'm wondering how this game does play on Switch though, because some things run just almost as well. But I'm playing on a Switch Lite, so you're kind of missing out on a lot with that.
Well, yeah, because like a Switch, for example, can have the capability to play on a full screen, but it's a video input, so it's not going to be the same as having like a full console running to a TV. But there are games out there that do work very well. Like for example, Plague Tale. It's a cloud-based software for that game, but it does play incredibly well on the Switch. But I think there are a lot of games that just wouldn't make sense on it, because while it is fun to have Skyrim portable, there is so much in that game that I have not picked it up because I'm like, how am I going to see all that shit on that tiny little screen? Like, how am I going to know that a freaking mud crab?
When we did our episode.
Oh my god, I don't know how you could see them damn little mud crabs just coming up and it's like, really, bro. I'm like a level 100 Dragonborn. I'm the leader of the freaking Thieves Guild and the Dark Brotherhood, and you really gonna come after my ass? Like, fuck you.
I mean, yeah, it's on a tiny screen. It probably would be better on if I had a Switch that could go full screen, but
yeah,
at least it ran well because it was originally a game on last generation consoles, or previous generation consoles, I should say. Like,
I was gonna say it started on the freaking PS3 and Xbox 360.
It was on the 360 and on the PS3. So whichever generation of gaming that was it 6 or 7? I don't remember.
Bethesda's really proving that they can go cross console and have remasters, huh?
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, no, and I'm surprised that I'm not surprised because this game, like I said, this game is pretty small. I imagine it's not a huge file actually.
Probably not.
So that's probably why it can run on Switch. So I guess if I ever come across any more money and it's we're getting close to like the Hellblade 2 episode. I mean, hey, maybe I might pick it up on Switch and replay it that way and see what it's like. But yeah, I'm actually glad though. I played it on PS4. I had the full screen, and I of course I played with headphones so that you can get the 3D sound that is, I think, necessary for the game.
Yeah, exactly. And it's a very immersive game, right? Like we talked about this in the episode. This game literally like pulls you out of your own body and consciousness and literally puts you into Senua's. Like you have to be seated in a seat with the headset on. Like that's the best way to play this game, to get the full immersive experience of feeling like people are talking in your own head. You're seeing this through Senua's eyes. Like that's the best way to play it. So like I know that it is available on Switch, but like if you want the best gameplay, get it on a console for sure.
Dope. Yeah, for sure. Or at least, from what I can tell. I mean, like I said, opinion on the Switch version pending, but if you want to experience this game in its full value, and I think that's important because, like I said, this game stresses quality. I'd love to see a current gen remaster or port of this. Like either an enhanced port or a remaster.
Yeah, like for example, Jedi Fallen Order got a remaster for Xbox and X and S. Oh Lord, this is going to be a difficult transition for me, and it's been 2 years.
Well, I think they're kind of going for like you can just call it Xbox.
Yeah.
So as far as the gameplay goes, but besides. Well, actually, yeah, let's talk a little bit more about the combat because, we mentioned how Senua always kind of gets that second wind mechanic where she can mash button, but eventually that runs out, or maybe that's the equivalent of her having a little bit of a health bar left, and so that can be
like an adrenaline rush.
So, but anyway, that you eventually will die, and you'll notice the rot will move up Senua's arm. It never does actually cover her entire body during the normal gameplay.
Yeah, we talked about that on the last episode. They're over here fooling us.
But and also the focus can be used in combat, and you have to charge it up over time. But by parrying and dodging successfully, yeah, this is a lot of parrying and dodging.
Parry.
That's what it is. It's parrying, dodge. There's parrying, there's dodging, and of course regular blocking. But if you're gonna block, you might as well parry. There's a light attack, a strong attack, and a shield breaker. a kick. And yes, there are parts of the game where you can kick people off the cliffs. The only thing that would make it better is if she did like a Spartan kick for those animations.
Oh my god, that would be great, because she's such a bad bitch that it would just be she may be dealing through her own mind, but Spartan kicking somebody wouldn't be the worst of her problems, that's for sure.
And it won't matter if it's like culturally what's the word? Accurate. Historically accurate of the picked warriors. This is all in her head anyway, guys. So let's say in the sequel she makes up she can imagine more advanced moves in her brain. Who cares?
Yeah, let her be a bad bitch in her psychosis. Okay, we live for that shit.
You can't put it into words. That moment when you look into the eyes of the one who is supposed to reassure you, make you feel safe. It only takes an instant. Fear swallows you before you have a chance to make sense of it. And darkness becomes a part of who you are. You killed him. Her world changed that day when the Northmen took him from her. Senua knows that there is no going back to how things were. That there is nothing to go back to at all. Stay still, stay quiet, hide, don't tell her.
Their gods can see into your mind. They will use this power to destroy you.
They won't stop me. I can still feel it.
Whatever's left of him, they will never let him go.
I'm not gonna let him rot here!
You're the one rotting here.
Leave me alone.
You will die here.
No!
And all your suffering will have been for nothing! Stop!
Dillion? Is that you? I'll find you, my love. I promise.
But yeah, no, I think that that's actually a lot of fun. But yeah, I like how over time, by fighting successfully and doing successfully dodging and attacking enemies or parrying them, builds up your charge or builds up your focus. And usually the voices will tell you focus when it's full so that you can use it. You'll actually Senua will move a lot faster. And so you can kind of like just zip from enemy to enemy. That's what I do. I'll slash, tilt the stick to move her aim to the other enemy, attack, swipe, and then I'll just go run over to somebody else holding the charge button, and then I'll just keep doing that as much as possible. And she's just a beast when she's in that focused state, and everything moves slower in relation to her, so it's a lot easier to dodge attacks.
It is though. Honestly, this is like, for me, playing this game reminds me of playing as Kirby on Super Smash Brothers. Like, you're button mashing. Like, full admit it. Like, this is button mashing, but they make it so artful that it doesn't make you feel as bad for button mashing, which is so much fun.
It's so fluid, and you can even chain together combos and be smart about it if you want, But I was mostly button mashing too.
Yeah, I can't even lie to you. Like, I button mashed the shit out of this game.
but there were systems, it was like, dodge and light attack mash, parry and strong attack. If they're saying finish him, then a lot of times that was going to be like a charge and strong attack, and I liked doing a lot of the sprint attacks too. Those were nice because usually you could catch an enemy guard with, one of the sprinting light attacks, and she'll just fucking stab them, and it's fast.
Exactly.
It usually cancels out whatever they're doing.
Like, fuck you.
And what's nice is that you can suck at combat too and just get hit down to the ground, mash X to get back up, and okay, you're cool.
So I actually, in the time that you were talking, which I was listening, I promise. So they weren't the type to be that warlike. Like they like, so Picts were Celtish. In actually looking at the map of where their territories were, it is very similar to what we see in the game. So it looks like she was just like literally wandering through the wilderness of her kingdom. They were not the most warlike people, but they were fearsome warriors. So we could have had a Spartan kick. Thank you very much, Ninja Theory. I'm waiting for that in the sequel. Let's go.
So it actually makes a lot of sense. She's an outcast of a more peaceful tribe, which makes sense why they were wiped out by the Northmen. If I'm not mistaken, all of the enemies are Northmen in the game. Those they're manifestations of her guilt and her fear. And that's ultimately what she's overcoming. So, obviously, all the enemies are going to be.
It was actually the Romans.
Distorted. Oh, they're Romans. Okay.
Uh-huh. Julius Caesar himself was fascinated by the culture. Upon meeting them in battle, he recorded that they dye themselves with woad, which produces a blue color and makes their appearance in battle more terrible. They wear long hair and shave every part of the body save the head and the upper lip. So, wow, okay. So they did a lot of research on these people in development of the game, which goes to show more. Even a team of 20 people made her look historically accurate, made her seem like her village's people, and made her like a fearsome woman who has all this internal time. I'm just wow. Ninja Theory, you have my heart now. I love you.
Yeah, no, they did their research in a lot of ways, as far as the mental health aspect goes, and as well as the cultural historical aspect goes.
Which, going into the combat, that makes me wonder, is this the type of sword style that we would see a Pict using? Because it's not typical sword style that you would see like a Greek or Roman use, because it looks different. Like the way that she parries is a little bit like, I'm going to say weird because it's not what I'm used to, but like, she parries a little bit weird. The way she carries her sword is not like typical of what you'd see in like British or Greek or Roman or anything like that. It's a little bit off. And I was always kind of weirded out by that, but seeing as how they did research on it, that makes sense. This might actually be like Pictish combat.
Yeah. I mean, I mostly noticed the Norse influences.
Yeah.
So that's and that's, I guess, where most of it, which I guess makes sense because Druth was a slave of the Northmen. So I don't know if Senua's tribe would have believed in the Norse gods, but it makes sense that Druth would have, and he's the one who tells all the stories, and that's what she seems to believe. So I would think that that's what she was upbringing.
Well, so the Picts were in modern day Scotland. So, I mean, Celtic runes and Nordic runes are very similar, but there are quite a few differences if you look at them very, very harshly. Because, like, for example, my father's side of the family is Swedish, and then my mom's side of the family is Celtic. So, like, you can see that it's very slight because they were very similar. Just kind of like Native American tribes, there's a lot of paintings that look very similar, but they're different. So it does make sense, especially if it's during the time that they're being taken over and they're being, just decimated as a tribe, that they would have influences of other cultures in their runes.
Yeah, I guess it makes sense. I mean, it's kind of all related, so to speak,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe, there are some gods that they share in common, because the game definitely does focus on the Norse gods, I've never heard of Valravn before, actually. That's one I'm not aware of, but Surt, Hela, obviously.
Hela, yeah.
And I'm not talking about Cate Blanchett.
Oh, love her. Hot as hell.
That's not the way that hell is portrayed in this game.
No. And Fenrir is not just some random dog who runs on a bridge, but that's a story for another time, kids.
Yeah, Fenrir in this game is like a nightmarish beast.
Yeah. Yeah.
And also arguably the hardest fight of the game.
He is, though, but he's a big baby. He's such a big baby.
I would say inarguably, because that dude that is the most difficult boss fight. For some reason, not all of her attacks were hitting when I was going through it. I did finish it.
Oh no!
In one go though. I don't think
really?
I ever died. No. But yeah, no. I think focus was good. It was handy to have focus charged up and don't use it right away, because when he can turn all the lights out and make it completely dark, and then you can't see where the fuck he is.
He is a terrifying dude, even in mythology in this game.
If you focus, you can see him again. So that's why it's handy to keep that charged up and to use it whenever you need to. But yeah, I still had a difficult time with him. He took forever. Hella's actually easy because she doesn't fight you herself, which maybe is there's some kind of allegory there. I'm not sure, but especially with how like the ending cutscene turns out, which I guess we'll probably talk about. But just that fight in general, you're just fighting hordes of enemies, and what I think is cool is that it's actually a little bit easier, and I'm talking about the first phase right now. It's a little bit easier than
the whole fight with him.
A lot of the other fights, because although you are bombarded by a lot of enemies, Senua's a lot stronger. It's like she has focus turned on permanently or something. She's fast, and she kills most enemies in just a couple hits.
She's so agile. It's insane. I'm like, bro, how are you bending like that right now?
Which is cool, because the second phase, what you have to do is actually let yourself die. At that point, the enemies apparently are unending. They will never stop. They'll continue to regenerate. And so it's kind of like, yeah, it's kind of fun to push them off as long as you can, kill as many as you can before you go down. But eventually you go down, just let Senua go down, and the voices will even tell you, they're like, let go, and then that's the end of it, is Senua lets go of her regret, lets go of her desire to
avenge Dillion.
Not avenge him, but to resurrect him, to bring him back, because that's her accepting his loss. That's her going through the final stage of grief and accepting it.
And I think that's so beautiful, because grief, and we talked about this a lot in the last episode. The last episode, we talked a lot about the mental health aspect, and a lot of things in this game that are heavy topics. And I know we wanted to get that out of the way before getting into the actual logistic elements of this game, and like gameplay and combat, and God, the graphics and sounds and stuff like that. But that's something that I did want to touch on, because I knew we would talk about the latter part of the game in this episode. It's the most interesting perspective of grief I think I've ever seen, because grief is so different for everyone. Everyone deals with it differently. How you handle even just different people's deaths in your life is always perceived differently. Like, for example, I had a friend who he was a volunteer firefighter and rolled his truck 8 times, and that was a very devastating death for me, and I was inconsolable. I was so upset. My aunt passed last year, and it was like I went through grief very, very quickly. And it wasn't as hard for me. And it's not because I had experience with death, but it just felt easier. And every death is going to feel different. And I think
different
that
for everybody. Yeah.
Yeah. And the way that she dealt with it, and the ending is just it's beautiful. Like that's the best word I can use for her accepting and completely dealing with Dillion's loss. She's just like, okay.
So is it possible then that the different sections of the game maybe even represent the stages of grief? I mean, if you think about it, could the Valravan segment be denial? Could Cert, was associated with fire, be anger, and bargaining be the section until you get defeated by Hela, and then depression would be that moment after where she contemplates suicide, and then she goes through the sea of corpses, and the voice in her head the entire time is telling her that she can't that she can't do shit, and she's lost her sword. She has to reforge that, or get the new sword, and then acceptance would be the very end of the game.
I think so, because in that last part right before you're getting to the final segment, she's really like, why am I doing this? She wants to literally, like, she pretty much, like, almost says, like, I want to go and curl up in a ball and never get up, pretty
Yeah.
much. Like, and it's the fourth stage of depression, which is the fourth stage of grief, which is depression. I think it does go through the 5 stages. I think you're right.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of the way that I see it, because that walk on kind of on the, not the beach, but I guess the shore, under the bridge, is depression, and her just kind of chasing after Dillion through all of the trials is her, I guess, overcoming her depression, and then once she's remade the sword, she has to fight her way through the corpses who are all trying to keep her down and keep her in depression, continuing to tell her, but she's fighting through it. And then I guess the next section of the game would be the process of acceptance, which doesn't finally culminate until the very last cutscene.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's beautiful how Hela, who you never actually directly fight at any point, ends up becoming Senua.
Yep.
Hela, you see Hela drop Dillion's head, and then the camera pans away and it comes back after Dillion's head his skull has fallen all the way, through towards the bottom, towards some seemingly endless pit, the camera pans back up towards who was once Hela, and in her place is Senua, and it's
Mm-hmm.
demonstrating that Senua threw the skull down, accepting Dillion's death, and that's
Mm-hmm.
just beautiful. I love how this communicates so much, and there's no real dialogue in this game to speak of. Senua never talks to anybody besides the voices in her head.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And you find out that she pretty much, her and herself and her mind were the antagonist the whole time. And it shows you just the toll that your own brain can do on you. And it's so heavy, but it's so beautiful. Like, the way that this game is made, this is just incredible. And also, you said, yourself, that there's not a lot of dialogue in this game. I'm excited for the sequel because Senua actually talks to people. I want to see what her interaction is like with other people.
Definitely looks like that, because in the trailer we saw her interacting what appeared to be with other warriors, and it's
Mm-hmm.
not clear whether those are real or not, because there's also some fucking monster shit coming out, and I guess that can't be real. That has to be in her head because it's fantasy, but they're reacting to it too, so I don't know.
Yeah, and then that begs the question, what's real and what's not.
Yeah, and maybe
Because,
the next
I
game
mean,
won't tell us either,
yeah, and that's the thing that kind of surprised me when they said that they were announcing a sequel, because it's like, this was the loss of Dillion and the love of her life, and accepting the death of him and his blood eagle, and the death of her mother, and her understanding that she's not in control, and that she's not going to be in control ever of anything that happens in her life, and that's just the way that life is. I wonder how it's going to translate in the second game, because it shows her interacting with people. It shows this other unrelenting force and other influences that are also going to be with the Furies and with Druth. So I definitely want to see what's going to happen.
Yeah,
I'm
same.
more excited to follow Senua's story. She's such a compelling character, and she's just an incredible force. Like I said a couple minutes ago, the Picts, they weren't very gruesome and warsome, but they were fearless warriors, and it wasn't just the men, it was the women too. And this is something that is also known in Viking culture and in Nordic culture, is women are not considered weak in a lot of places. They're considered very, very strong. I'm definitely looking to see, she is an outcast, but how has she redeemed herself since accepting Dillion's loss? Like, where are we going to go from here?
Right.
Because she's still suffering from psychosis. You don't just go through a psychosis because you're losing somebody. Like, that's a lifelong thing. That's a very, very severe form. Sometimes happening from trauma. Sometimes it's genetic, like we said in the last one, because her mom had some issues. We don't know where it's going to go from here. But, like, does she learn how to control the voices in her head to interact with other people? Does she become a full member of her tribe? Where do we go from here? What do we do now?
Yeah, no, exactly. I'm interested to see where they go in the sequel. I'm interested to see the technical capabilities. I'm interested to see if they expand on any of the gameplay, because I feel like this game did, progressively complicate the puzzles. The puzzles were
Yeah.
progressively more difficult and more more multi-stepped. They required, more thinking and, over time. So how do you top that? They've got to become, increasingly more complex somehow.
And yet that guy said in that interview, we're looking to do more with less. Like, what are you guys going to do?
Yeah, and are they going to use the same basic puzzle types? Doubt it. They're probably going to go with some new shit.
They're going to up the ante, bro.
If
they're
not
going to
all
up it.
New shit. I like, in particular, I think that the sections where she's going through the trials were really fun. Because, they kind of would focus on a specific type of puzzle element, or they would, take something away from you and force you to play it a certain way. And in not any one of those was there any combat. It was all puzzle based.
I loved all the puzzle parts. I'm a big puzzle fan, though. We all know this. I love puzzles. Same. I'm like, yay, puzzle! Except for the water temple and freaking Twilight Princess. Fuck that shit.
So anyway, I guess let's get into our final thoughts here. Starting with you, Megan.
Okay. Final thoughts. If you're looking for something that's definitely independent, it's a little bit more indie than what we typically talk about, and just an incredible, beautiful game that not only deals with the heavy elements of loss and grief, but also, mental health and, seeing the perspective of, different types of mental health and different mental diseases and issues, and a game that's just so beautiful and handling that and handling it respectfully and having a great timeline with little to no elements to help you, but yet it does in its own way. This is the game for you. This game is one of its own. There's a lot of games that we said are very unique, but Senua she is her own. She is not like Aloy. She is not like Cal Kestis. She's not like any of the characters we talked about. She is a very harrowing, dark, yet ethereal character, and I think she's something that you definitely should spend. She's a character you should spend some time with. Definitely a good game to give you retrospective as well. And if you're looking for a way to escape from grief and find your way through the stages of grief, this is a great game for you.
100%. I mean, I think that this game is definitely something I recommend. Although if you are dealing with mental illness, I mean, I guess I should say, should apply a trigger warning. Obviously this game has a depiction of, not a depiction of suicide, but it very
intrusive thoughts.
Yeah. It definitely has a depiction of contemplation of suicide, and I think that's very obvious, and talking about it with the voices in her head. So obviously, if and multiple other types of triggers. So obviously, if you're somebody who's dealing with something and somehow you got through this entire episode of us talking about it, okay.
Yeah, we talked about some heavy shit, bro.
But you don't think that you're up to playing it, then yeah, don't. But other than that, if you are a reasonably adjusted person who's not dealing with anything, too horribly right now, which is interesting because, I deal with depression and anxiety, but I feel pretty stable, so I played it and I was okay. But I could definitely see this being, a little bit harder.
A little triggering, yeah. Because I deal with anxiety and I did get a little anxious. I was like, okay, I need to calm down. I need to put the controller down.
Yeah, I could see states in my life where I maybe wouldn't want to play this.
Yeah.
But I'm glad that I did right now. And so for anybody else that is not dealing directly with that right now, then go for it. It's a fantastic experience. I recommend it to anybody because, like I said before, as far as gameplay goes, it's very accessible.
Exactly.
It's something that if you're not a gamer but you want to experience that, you can. And I think that it was very telling that the people involved were people of all ages. I saw people that at first glance, I guess I just wouldn't think they were gamers. They seem to not be the primary demographic, although who knows? Maybe they are gamers. But, the people that were involved in this game were impressed with the results. And whether or not, whether they watch someone play it or whether they played it themselves. And I think that's very telling that almost anybody, I think, could pick this up. And it's hard, Don't get me wrong, but it gives you almost no direction.
Yeah, they don't hold your hand at all.
but I don't feel like it requires the experience that most hardcore games would.
Yeah, like you don't need a whole tutorial sequence like you do in Horizon or Skyrim or any of that. Like you just go into it. And that's kind of great too. It's not the kind of game where, there's like a 2-hour intro sequence looking at you, Twilight Princess. But it's a game where you can just anybody can look at it, anybody can play it, and that's so cool. That's not something that we see a lot nowadays. There are games out there that give you your cheesy intros and stuff like that, but it's not required for this game, and I find that so much fun. I find it great that you can just, all right, let's go. I heard a friend talking about it. I've never really played video games. I'm gonna play this game. I love that.
It just throws you into it, which is something that a lot of people will highlight as a feature of a hardcore game, is one that has very little tutorial and just throws you into the world. But what's nice about this game is it does have the pause menu. With the second you hit pause, you have a view of the controls and no other menus to deal with other than that. And it also has, I believe, accessibility options. So it's very much it's very possible to pick it up and play it even without the direction. All of the resources are there, and even more if you need it for your particular handicap or disability. On top of that, the combat, while difficult, is forgiving.
Yes, 100%. And
yeah.
Oh, go for it.
And I was saying, and puzzle solving is only as hard as puzzle solving can be. That's never been something that it particularly denotes having to be good at video games. It's as good as a logic puzzle would be.
Yeah, it's not going to be like COD where it just drops you in and you have no idea what the hell you're doing. You can figure it out very easily, and even if it's a difficult puzzle, there's a lot of games that will give you nudges, and there's a little nudge. It's not that it's you're going to hear it from a voice in her head, but you'll get it. You'll get it eventually.
Yeah, there's several visual cues as well. Finding the runes in the environment would have been impossible if it didn't actually tell you. So some of it is just walking around and waiting for an indication that, oh, hey, this rune is in this area, and a visual indication of what you're looking for. And sometimes it was a little bit hard still, but this isn't a game that I really felt like, aside from maybe a couple times I ever really had to follow a guide. I tried not to. Only if I got to a part where I was genuinely stuck, and I'd be like, okay, let me just, look it up on the internet real quick.
Yeah, this is not Elden Ring, fam, and that's not me talking shit on Elden Ring. It's just that game hard, bro. That game hard.
No, that game is just like, fuck you. That game will humble you real quick.
That game will punish you for breathing, bro.
This game is very forgiving because, like I said, in combat, you can get up a lot of times, if not infinitely, depending on how much health is lost, or I don't know how it's determined, but you can continue to get up, and even if you do die, you just start that segment over again. The checkpoints are pretty liberal.
Yeah, it's not hard, and guys, I know that this game is very heavy, and I didn't speak much on the subject in my final thoughts, but I definitely, if you're a listener of our podcast and you understand, a lot about what us as cast members go through and all of that stuff, I think it's a worthy game to pick up. It's on the Switch, it's on, I believe, PlayStation as well, it's on PC, I think, and it's on Game Pass. So I mean, You've got readily available access. If you're looking for something that we would feel pretty strongly about, besides the games that we've talked about for a long time, like Skyrim and Mass Effect that I always reference, this is a very good game. This is a game that it's unusual, but it's a good game for anyone to play, and that's what I love about it. That's why I picked it.
100%. Well, anyway, guys. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or feedback on your platform of choice. You can find Collateral Gaming wherever you get your podcasts: Apple, Spotify, Google, YouTube, you name it. And check out our Patreon as well, where we have exclusive Let's Play video game commentaries, and probably try to release some more, before the next season comes up. Speaking of which, this season's coming to an end. Our next episode will be our season finale on Fire Emblem. Yeah, specifically Fire Emblem: The Blazing Blade, as it is later retroactively titled. But when it came out in the States originally, it was just Fire Emblem. It was the first one released in the United States. And so on the GBA, so to speak. Fire Emblem 7, if that helps narrow it down for you Japanese game players that are listening to this podcast in English.
Hey, they're cooler than us. They get exclusive content that we never will. Like
yeah, no.
Final Fantasy, or not Final Fantasy, Phantasy Star.
Final Fantasy 2. Final Fantasy 7 was like the third or fourth game that was released in the United States. That's just where they went, fuck it. And they decided to stop renaming them, and they just magically caught up to the Japanese numbering system. But there are several Final Fantasy games, although most of them have probably been remade or remastered or ported at some point. But Fire Emblem, that isn't the case. I know not every single game. They've remade everything starting from, I think, they've only remade the first 3 games and localized them. So yeah, we still have like 4 through 6 Fire Emblem games that have never been. And I think the last Fire Emblem remake 3 also wasn't released in the United States. So fuck that. Localize all your games.
We're not cool. It's fine.
No, I'm kidding. No, actually, I think that's genuinely a thing, though. I think, like, especially in the past, I mean, you see this less now, but Japanese have definitely had kind of an attitude of American gamers wouldn't enjoy this or wouldn't understand this, or this would be too hard for them, which sometimes feels a little patronizing, but
at the same time, it's like, yeah, you're probably right, bro.
It happens a lot less now, but for instance, that's why Super Mario Brothers 2 in the United States was a reskin of Doki Doki Panic, and we never got it. It was legitimately deemed too hard.
We're just not cool enough. It's fine.
Check out our season finale on Collateral Cinema as well. We talked about Sidekicks featuring Chuck Norris and Jonathan Brandis. It's basically the Karate Kid, except Jonathan Brandis has these really realistic hallucinations of Chuck Norris.
It's fine.
Yeah.
It's Chuck Norris. Who wouldn't want to hallucinate about Chuck Norris? He's the man.
Oh, yeah, no, there are plenty of Chuck Norris jokes in the episode, by the way. That was obligatory. Oh. You know, we brought 2007 back. It's okay.
This is why I love y'all.
But, yeah, anyway, so I guess that's really all there is to say. Anything else to plug, Megan?
I'm going to be definitely trying to do some more content coming up whenever we get to our new place. We're currently in the process of moving, so this will be the last episode before we're in our new home. And I definitely want to get some stuff out there. There's just not enough square footage in this tiny little apartment. I know that we had talked about Agony being on this episode. He was unfortunately just not able to do it because of some scheduling conflicts. But definitely check him out on Twitch, agony.rising. He is a freaking hilarious guy, and I love him to death. And other than that, yeah, definitely stay tuned. We're going to be dropping the finale soon, but we've got some exciting content coming up in the next season. Y'all we're going to knock off your socks, guys. I'm excited.
Yeah. And while Victims and Villains wasn't with us physically because of our own inability to communicate in a timely and effective manner before the episode, and then I chickened out because it got too close to the episode, we'll probably still plug you guys in the description in the podcast notes, because that's a fantastic resource to check out. On that note, if you are somebody that is struggling with any kind of mental illness, we want to take this particular episode to emphasize that you are not alone, and there are plenty of resources. Again, our friends at Victims and Villains have a whole host of resources. There is the National Suicide Hotline. You had that pulled up on the last part. Do you have that?
Yes, I do.
Cool. Yeah. Megan will plug that. That's a fantastic resource. I know it's something I feel like I could have used at some point. I just was too stupid to do it. I take that back. It's not unintelligence. It's just, it's like our own pride getting in the way,
It is. So the National Suicide Prevention Hotline is 1-800-273-8255. If you're not comfortable with talking on the phone, they do have a chat feature. And also us here on in all of Collateral Media, we are here for you. Don't ever be scared to reach out. We will definitely, talk to you for as long as you need. We're here for you. And we definitely, as much as you support us, we want to support you back. So anything that you guys need, please don't ever hesitate to reach out.
Yeah, I'll try to plug those in the show notes of the episode as well, so that you guys can have that stuff. Also, we did actually just get a message from Mr. Josh, Captain Nostalgia Berkey, that he wants us to do something in September, so...
Yay! Another marathon!
Let's see. A pledge drive is actually what he said.
Oh, okay.
We would be doing a live podcast again, so...
Let's go, baby!
Yeah, excited to announce that as well. I'm sure we'll talk about it in whatever Collateral Cinema episode comes next. And
we
like
love you, victims and villains.
Yeah, we love you. We're here in spirit. Maybe I'll ask them to send me a promo or something.
Heck yeah.
So that we can throw that in our...
all of our fun stuff.
Yeah. So, anyway, guys, that being said, I'm Ashley Chancellor.
And I'm Megan Gomez.
This has been Collateral Gaming, and we are out.
Goodbye!
Collateral Gaming is a Collateral Media podcast. All music and game clips are owned by their respective creators and are used for educational purposes only. Please don't sue us. We're poor.